Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Monday, the 16th of June. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined by a full-strength squad, as I always say when we get two on. I always enjoy getting three on the show. Joshua joins us first of all. How's it going, Joshua?
It is going good, mate. Yeah, what about you?
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, the sun is shining down here in Warrington. A lovely weekend, actually. So, very much in a good mood because we're here to talk all things at Rangers. Plenty to discuss over the weekend. Transfer window, of course. Lots of noise and speculation about departures and incomings. We'll get stuck into that soon. But Stevie also joins us. How's it going, Stevie?
Yeah, good morning, mate. It is not sunny here, Derek.
Oh, dear.
It was a rather treacherous trip to school with the kids, but made it safe and sound and back. So, yeah, ready to go. Plenty to discuss, as you say.
Yeah, school's will be finishing up soon, Stevie, won't it? Is it end of June?
Yeah, this is their last full week, and then it's a wee couple of days next week. I think they integrate into their new classes next at the end of the week, and then they have a couple of days in the new classes, and then that's them finish for 7 weeks or something. So that's going to be great fun.
Any plans before we dive into the news? Going anywhere?
We're going down to the Lake District, I think, but we're not actually going abroad until October time. So, these are all plans that have been in the works for a year or so. So I just do as I'm told, Derek. You know me.
Lake District is superb. It's fantastic up there or down there, as you'll be coming, Stevie. But
do you know the wee meme of the wee guy that just toddles along at the airport and who has no idea where they're going and stuff? That's definitely me. I don't pay attention to anything. So,
you been in Lake District, Joshua?
I have. It's not the first question I thought would be asked on the podcast, but I've been to Lake Windermere.
Oh, class!
Nice part of the world. So I'm sure. I bet we have someone listening that is from the Lake District or Lake Windermere.
Yeah, I'm sure we have. People tuning in all over the place. So, lovely part of the world. Right, let's, before we do that, we'll do the show admin. Give a shout out to our podcast sponsors, the great guys at Willows Fencing, the Glasgow-based fencing company you can trust, and are proud partners of the Rangers Review. They've got over 20 years of experience and unparalleled quality. Their qualified team is dedicated to keeping customers happy and providing exceptional work, aiming to deliver nothing but perfection in every job. They offer free consultations and a 10% discount code if you use the Rangers Review code. If you head over to their website, willows-fencing.com. Right, where shall we start? Lots of transfer stuff to get our teeth stuck into. But before we touch on that, Issame Charai, that was news over the weekend. Rangers confirmed that he is departing the club, and he sent a message on the club website saying, as I leave Rangers, I want to thank everyone at the club for their support during my time here. This is a really special club, and as it enters a new era, I want to wish everyone associated with the club the very best for what comes next. Above all, I want to thank the Rangers supporters for their amazing backing across the period. We had some high moments and some low moments, but their support was a constant. It is something I will always remember and be grateful for. And he, as you may have seen in the news this morning, folks, he was linked to a job in Belgium, closing in on becoming the next head coach of Westerlo, who are a team in the Belgian top flight. So he'll become the main man. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on over there. Decent job for him. I know he turned down head coach jobs before he came to Rangers, but he's very highly regarded, Joshua. But it's small. It turned out to be a short but sweet stint at Rangers. Bit of a strange one all round, given the contract he was given at the time, and he's departing a few months later on.
I think, and you or Stevie can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a 3.5-year deal he signed in January, wasn't it? Someone looking for a nod, but I'm pretty sure it was. I forgot to check it right before I came on the show, but I was speaking to someone about it recently, and that obviously lined up with the fact that Clement at that period of time had signed that deal until 2028 and had 3.5 years on his deal. It was around that time in January that Patrick Stewart had publicly backed Clement once by that point, maybe twice after the Queen's Park result, and that was a decision driven to at the top of the club to try and, I guess, make it work under Clement, as Stuart had spoken about publicly. It didn't. That was a costly decision for Rangers. I don't think it's Charai's fault individually that he's here and gone inside of such a short space of time. I think it lines up, Derek, with the fact that, as we'll talk about with transfers today, I think Rangers have missed a bit of a trick in getting a head start on this season in terms of blooding in a few more young players, getting the squad a little bit more ready, not being in this position where there's still so many decisions to be made in terms of players' futures. So it fits a little bit with that. For me, when the league went in whatever it was, January or February, I think Rangers could have positioned themselves a bit better for a whole range of decisions. This too, obviously, there's some extenuating circumstances with the takeover and the head coach. But Charai is another footnote in a season and a couple of seasons of so much change, and another demonstration of why you just can't get a consistent club if you've not really got consistent decisions right across the board.
Yeah, Chris says Charai for Freegan. This is the striker that's been linked with the Rangers. Croatian striker, plays for Westerlo. You can do a sort of coach-player swap, why not? But Stevie, sad to see Issame Charai go. As I touched on there, he's very well liked, but obviously he's went and taken up a job to become the main man, which I can't begrudge them that. Think it'll be a loss for Rangers. Never quite knew him that a great deal, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think we can say really, because we don't know him. I do know that he was well liked amongst the players and the staff. He was a very popular member of staff. I would say as well that my understanding, and Joshua might know this as well, is that he did sign a 3.5-year deal, but he had a break clause in the summer if he ever got a management job. So I think when Rangers are saying it's a mutual agreement and then he's walking straight into a job, I don't think that's a situation that's going to cost Rangers any money or anything like that. You know, it's a mutual thing. He's allowed to go and become a coach. So we wish him best of luck. And, you know, you never know what's going to happen in the future with him. But, you know, I hope that he goes and he has a successful career as a manager. As I said, I think he was pretty well liked and everybody is very thankful of his period here, very professional, etc. But other than that, you know, what can you really say? I don't think he ever spoke or ever really done anything publicly. So, you know, it's one of those ones, but it does allow Russell Martin room to shape his own backroom staff, which we think that and know that he's going to do in the coming weeks. So, like Joshua said about being a wee bit behind, there's still work to be done on that as well, Derek. As far as I'm aware, we don't have a goalkeeping coach. No. You know, we do have, you know, he is bringing a couple of people, an assistant and a head of performance, but, you know, you're going to need one or two coaches. You're going to need a goalkeeper coach and amongst all that. So there's definite work to be done. You know, throughout the club, we still don't know what's happening with the medical department. And considering we start back a week today, you know, there's a lot of work to be done by the football club. And I'm sure behind the scenes, you know, that's all coming together. But publicly, we don't know very much. But what was interesting is, just to change it slightly, that Leeds signed a boy yesterday and nobody knew anything about it until basically 2 hours before it was formally announced. And everything was watertight until that point. It makes Joshua's job a bit more difficult. Mm-hmm. But for us, you know, I think that might be a sign of when things are to come, that you won't actually hear about it until this guy's here and it's signed and sealed. So we're in for an interesting few weeks, that's for sure. I certainly hope we are, because there's a lot to do.
Yeah, they've been pretty watertight, Rangers, not really releasing much with regards to links, but players have been linked. You'll have seen certainly some names suggested over the weekend. Joshua, Harry Darling, you'd have seen on the website, as a player that's been linked with a move to Rangers. Swansea City defenders contract has expired there. 25 years of age, played under Martin at both MK Dons and Swansea City as well, expected to move on. He is one of the latest players to be linked. It also comes as Cameron Burgess, who was linked with the move to Rangers after his contract expired at Ipswich. He's actually moved to Swansea, and I'm fairly happy the Swans fans at the signing of Burgess there. What's the latest with regards to that, Joshua? It's clear Rangers want to bring a centre-backs, plural, in.
Yeah, I saw the link because I wrote that, so I was across it on Saturday. But as you say, a lot of moving pieces. First on Burgess, and Mulligan comes into this too. We said in that story, which was Saturday morning, feels a long time ago now, that those moves weren't anticipated. They had been moves that had previously been lined up in this plan that had kind of been formulated before investment was clear. That, as we understand it, had also at one point included Umar Kamara, who's now obviously moved elsewhere too, but was, I guess, a plan to get the squad somewhat ready for the start of the window, maybe then have more targeted investments later in the window with bigger finances once that became available. Cameron Burgess obviously then goes to Swansea, and I think you will see Russell Martin, Kevin Thelwell, Dan Purdy now go for players that they know or that their networks know, or that maybe are a slightly better fit to Martin's football. You compare Darling to Burgess, for example, and that's not close to anywhere being done as we understand it. As Stevie says, there's a lot of moving parts in this, a lot of things can change, and part of the reason is because Martin's only started in that job officially last week, and there's going to be a lot of work to do in a short period of time for Rangers. Darling's a bit younger than Burgess, I think 3 or 4 years, has obviously played in Russell Martin's system over a couple of clubs. Conor Cody is another player that we and others have reported that there's interest in. I think there's some question marks about the pace of those two players together. Were they to be the two players that Rangers sign, or do they maybe move for one of those two individuals there and compare a bit more of an athletic centre-back, or a centre-back known for their athleticism next to him? But they only have 3 centre-backs in the building. As Stevie says, pre-season starts back. Is it a week today? Is it 23rd, Stevie, isn't it? So not long away at all. And of those 3 centre-backs, while Robin Proper is still at the club, and the FC20 sporting director spoke about that last week, the fact that they'd like to bring him back, but he still wants to receive some clarity. If and when Proper was to go, you've only got Suter and Nsiala in there, and you definitely need more for the Champions League qualifiers coming up soon. So the centre-back definitely a position to watch over the next few weeks.
Harry Darling, is he a player that excites you, Stevie?
No, players that excite me are fast, tricky wingers and goal-scoring threats, but that's not to be. We certainly need some centre-backs. Derek, I don't know a lot about him. I only know what I've read, that he's been a Russell Martin starter at the last couple of clubs. Russell Martin's been at before Southampton, so I must admit, I've seen a wee clips of him. Obviously when you're linked to these things, the links become available on the internet and the wee compilations and things which you watch. I think he's got quite a good goal scoring return. Was I right in saying that he had 18 goals and 100 odd appearances? So I think that's right. I haven't properly looked at it, to be honest. I didn't know that he was coming up today. I wasn't sure of how serious the links were. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's probably natural that we'll be linked with ex-Russell Martin players that he's worked with and that he knows and is familiar with. But what I would say is some of them will just make sense because we do need players in quickly. I think that's a priority, as Joshua says. I do think we're a wee bit behind the curve with a lot of things at the club, but there's context to that, understandably. There's been a lot going on, but I'd like to think that over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and Chris and I slightly talked about this on our show, that things will start happening. Russell Martin says 1 or 2 are needed before the Champions League, and I think that was a conservative guess. At least I would be considering 5 or 6 are needed before that point. But let's see how it all turns out, Derek. So somebody like Harry Darling would probably come into the equation as being a sensible one for what Russell Martin knows. But again, there's a duty to get the likes of Robin Proper and that moved on as well. So I would rather these things began to take shape and we could all, begin to see a plan on unfolding, which I'm certainly sure there is, but we're not renowned for our patience, are we? So the window's been open 9 hours, 45 minutes. Come on, let's get a move on here.
Gavin with an interesting point. He says, is he any better than Ben Davies? Is he better than Proper? Who knows? I'm not entirely sure. As Joshua and Stevie mentioned there, I'm not an avid watcher of Swansea City, but I get the point. It's Rangers, for me, a real physical, dominating centre half. I'm not entirely sure Harley Darling is that. But Joshua, you want to jump in there?
I was just going to say, Gavin raises a point that I forgot to mention. It's actually 4 senior centre backs that Rangers have, because they also have Ben Davies, the club
forgotten man.
Yeah, who is on not insignificant wages. Who's obviously had that good season with Birmingham, but where does he see his future? Is he one of these players that Martin could give a second chance to? We just don't know. There is so many different moving parts. I think Darling is a bit more of a physical defender, predominantly plays on the right hand side. But yeah, that's Gavin reminds us rightly there that Davies is also at the club and comes into that conversation too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think he's got a very good reputation down south, Ben Davies. But as you touched on there, Josh, he's on a good contract at Rangers. I'd imagine he'll want to play football. Will Birmingham come back in for him at some point? Who knows? Kieran Dowell, of course, is another one. I'd imagine will be moving on as well. But things need to start moving. One player there's been a lot of speculation around in the last couple of weeks is Cyril Dessers, and heavily rumoured to be closing in on the move to AEK Athens. As we touched on, the Greek journalist Giannis Georginopoulos, who we had on the show a few years ago, tweeted yesterday, in fact, he said, at the moment, no deal between AEK Athens and Rangers, but talks in good mood, and the Greek club are optimistic. Where are we there, Joshua, with regards to that? Do you think that is a move that could happen this week?
What could happen this week? I don't know. With Dessers, it's an intriguing one, Derek, because you've also got the Hamzigaman situation in the background. If you were to push me on one player who I think probably will go this window, or given the interest that is being reported in loads of different places now and is pretty common knowledge, I think Higaman is a player that Rangers could struggle to keep hold of right across the window. And then again, you have this question of how do you time these things? Because last season, you kept Dessers for the Champions League qualifiers. And arguably, that would have been the right decision if Jeffrey doesn't get that red card that isn't a red card against Dynamo Kyiv. And therefore, Rangers get through and get the money that comes with getting through to the Champions League playoff. What I don't believe any, as the kind of source you've cited references to, Derek. It's our understanding that no bid's been accepted at this point. Obviously, players technically shouldn't speak to other camps while they're still under contract at clubs. But we know how football works now. It's not as if agents and interested parties aren't kind of always in discussions. Dessers is a player who's moved a lot in his career, and it's a kind of a conversation we've had in the last two transfer windows, isn't it? The slight difference I'd say this time is that Rangers have rejected two good bids for Dessers in the last two windows, and you'd imagine that they want to get close to that, which is around the fee they paid for him, if he is to move on, because he scored 29 goals last season. And then again, there's a question of, well, does Martin see him as a player that he wants to keep around? How does it fit into the short and long-term plan? So I don't think anything is absolutely imminent. As Stevie says, never say never, given the fact that you need to do a lot of work in a short period of time before these Champions League qualifiers. But what's kind of stopped moves for Dessers in the last couple of windows has been that Rangers have been dependent on him. And at this moment in time, I don't know if that's any different until we were to get someone else in.
I'd be sorry to see him go, Stevie. I've got to admit, I like the big guy. I know he frustrates, but I think he's been an asset to Rangers. And I don't want to say be careful what you wish for, but whoever they bring in to replace Cyril, they have to guarantee Rangers sort of same amount of goals for the money. I think some of the sort of fees that have been quoted are decent money for him, but whoever comes in to replace him, I know, as we touched on there, they've been linked with a couple of strikers, have to come in and hit the ground running, starting in the Champions League qualifiers next month, 4 weeks.
Yeah, but I think that's the case with anybody, isn't it? You don't get any leeway at this football club, so it doesn't really matter who comes in. I don't think anyone, if we were going to bring in, Turjaman or Frigan from Croatia, that people would go, oh, well, he's not as good as Dessers, or compare him to Dessers, whether we like it or not. Cyril has a lot of baggage at this football club, so he will go, and by tomorrow people will forget him and move on. So that's not a criticism of Cyril. Unfortunately, it's just where he is in this football club. I don't think there's many in this squad currently who people would be that upset to lose. So, aside of maybe your Raskins, your Igamans, your Demandis, possibly, there's not many others that people would say. People are desperate for a clean slate, Derek. And, I think, unfortunately for Cyril Dessers, history will be kind to him. There's a lot of good finishes and a lot of good moments. Undeniably, he's got talent, but it just comes down to what, Ronald de Boer always said, that, he's either great or he's no use at all. And sadly, there's not much in between, because I've seen Cyril Dessers go from, prime finishes to, the worst misses in the blink of an eye. So he will go. If he does go, he will go with our thanks and things. But I don't think you'll see many, players been linked or come in, and we'll worry about it being similar to the type of player he's been, Derek. So I'm always of the opinion that I think now's the right time to cash in on many of our first team players, if the money's right. And for Cyril to go, I'd be wanting up northwards of £5 million, which is a slight progression in what we paid for him, but it's a fair return for somebody that's had 2 goal scoring seasons here. So we'll wait and see how that turns out. You can never tell, because foreign kind of reporting on players is always a tricky one. It can be accelerated, and then you get word back here is that it's not as close as what they're making out and things like that. And then other times links come out of the blue and they turn out to be spot on. So you just never really know what's going on with it. We'll just have to wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised, like Joshua says about Robin Proper, if that's another case of waiting until there's a conversation with Russell Martin and players get back and things resume. So and likewise, agents will talk to clubs that are interested and say, well, if Cyril does come here, we want X, Y, Z. It doesn't necessarily mean a deal struck or anything. It just means that they've outlined plans and things like that. You know what football's like. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. If he does go, he'll go with best wishes and thanks for his contribution. But like many others, Derek, and it's not just him, as I said, to repeat myself, I'm not sure that many of us would be too upset that members of this first team squad are leaving.
Yep, our good friend of the show over in Italy, Leonardo, says get Vardy. Yeah, I agree, Leonardo. Go and get him, and he would certainly hit the ground running. I am sure of that. Just if it does go, Joshua, highlights his best Rangers moment. World's greatest DJ says his goal at Old Trafford, the pick of the bunch. That was certainly up there. Just trying to think of any others that would be Albetis. It was a joy to be in that stadium when he'd done that. I think that would probably just eclipse the goal at Old Trafford, although it was world class. He has produced some sensational moments in the Rangers jersey. Yeah,
probably Old Trafford was the being at that game, and the fact that it was just a kind of long ball up the pitch, and he managed to score out of nothing. And the question would be, he scored 29 goals in a poor team. He scored 29 goals, but he's also scored 5 after the split, or was it 4 or 5 after the split? Which I'd always be a bit iffy about. Hat trick against Fraser. Was it Fraserburgh? No, it was Fraserburgh. Which again, not to discredit that, but there's always a story behind the figures too. Another point that's worth mentioning is, are Rangers are they gonna? What am I trying to say here? The last regime, I think, if they've got a bid for Dessers now and they had a sporting director in place who could accept that, because we've explained before that without a sporting director, the manager's kind of the dominant football voice. And the manager's thinking about, who do I need to win next month? Whereas the people above him in a sporting sense need to think, well, how are we going to have money for the next transfer window? How are we going to reinvest it? Short-term pain for a bit of long-term gain. But will the new regime look at it and think, well, we just need to get through these qualifiers and we need them for one more season? I don't know. I think these are all still decisions that are going to be being made internally at the moment. Eggman as well, as I mentioned, comes into that conversation too. If he were to go and Dessers, is that too much change given Danilo hasn't played much football at all? And if Rangers didn't have Champions League qualifiers, you'd give yourself a couple more weeks. But the first game could be against, who's the team they could play? Norwegian team. Brann, who'd be 16 games into their season, wouldn't they? I believe, if Rangers were to draw them. So lots of and Martin hasn't seen any of these players, and I guess if you're a manager, you probably want a couple of weeks of pre-season. Then I don't think Dessers will be back right on the whistle, so to speak, because he's been on international duty. Some will, but I believe that Oscar Cortez is coming back early. Was told that last week that he'll be in the building this week as he tries to get ahead of the curve a little bit and what's going to be a really important season for him. But I think Dessers could be a little bit behind just because he was on international duty with Nigeria. Was he? Am I wrong in saying that?
So international players aren't required to be back until July the 1st, I believe. Yeah, but the initial squad returning will be phased from the 23rd. That's the way I understand it.
Yeah, so that's July 1st is quite a while away, Derek, isn't it?
But it's a joke they're playing internationals anyway.
I know, it is.
It's just nice. The football's continuing. I just want the players on a beach just relaxing, as Dujon Sterling was doing. He posted on his Instagram, just chilling on a yacht. That's what I want the players doing. Nico Raskin replied, "My boy," which Dujon then replied, "Sign the contract." So you better sign the contract. Stevie, you've got a piece on the website over the weekend, of course, on Raskin, Issame, and whether Rangers should be looking to cash in. But if there's a contract on the table, if Nico's tuning in, do as Dujon says, buddy.
Oh yeah. Nico, make Nico captain and let him stay. Keep James Tavernier as club captain and make him the on-field captain when James isn't playing would just be the ideal scenario for me. It gives Nico, you can keep Nico Raskin another year and have him, play the way he did. Certainly in the last 6 months, I think he grew under Barry Ferguson as well. I also think of Russell Martin. There's a lot of talk in the kind of stuff I've watched and heard about previous teams and previous people talk about he plays with that number 6, that kind of pivot that people call it. I think that if you get like a proper 6 in there, Nico Raskin could thrive under Russell Martin. So yeah, the ideal solution is you get that contract signed, and I think that's what we all want. On Dijon Sterling, I spoke about this the other night on my own podcast. I found out he's aiming for a kind of September, October return phase, which is absolutely ideal because there was a real fear that you wouldn't see him for the rest of this is calendar year. So really kind of enthusiastic about that. Hopefully, he comes back stronger because he's the type of player that at centre back in a Russell Martin team could really thrive, pace and power, and you're kind of hoping that the Calvin Bassey side of him would emerge and we have that kind of renaissance. There's a lot to go. Dujon needs to stay fit. He's another one that you really struggle with. Yeah, absolutely is. And he comes under the kind of Cortez and Danilo bracket that what if they stayed fit? What kind of players could they become? But you definitely want Nico to stay, Derek. That's for sure.
Yeah, you agree with that, Joshua?
Yeah, you definitely want him to stay in an ideal world. And I think compared to a few weeks ago, if you'd said to me a few weeks ago who's most likely to leave, I would have put my chips on Raskin, whereas now I'd probably put my chips on Issame, being the most likely to leave the club this summer. He's 24. Raskin, isn't he? We've spoken about this before. What's the opportune moment to sell? Even though Rangers have this investment, the only way you start to get big fees for players is if you work up a reputation of selling them, and you need to start somewhere. Rangers should probably be selling a player, I think, every single summer. So again, he's an international player. He'll be back slightly later. Where does he see his future? There's a lot of interest in him, and if a serious bid comes in, can Rangers reject that? But again, in the centre of the pitch at the moment, they're maybe not quite like, because they've got Rice and Barron and Diomande in there, but they would definitely need to replace him. It's not as if they've got a ready-made replacement to come in and play that role. Whether he would be, we don't actually know what formation and setup Martin's going to play as well, do we? Because
no.
At fullback at the moment, there's so many questions. Like Sterling, if you're squad planning for next season, do you plan at centre back or do you plan at right back? Because Tavernier is also within that centre back conversation, and I think that he would be open to that because it would prolong his career. So then, do you need a first choice right back, or if you go and sign a load of centre backs, or are you then just overloading the right back position? You've not really got right backs or full backs who play inside the pitch at all. It's a squad that is really lacking wingers as well. We've reported on the interest in Poku, but that's not done, and there's a lot of competition for him. Oscar Cortez, so many unknowns because of last season. So there's just so many things to get right in a short space of time, and that's what makes this summer so kind of difficult to cover, but also intriguing in the same breath.
Yeah, it's time, as Stevie said earlier, to get a move on. We'll finish up with this other news you would have seen over the weekend. Rangers have submitted a full response to the SFA after a notice of complaint was issued over John Brown's corrupt comments on Rangers TV. It follows, of course, the ghost goal involving Nico Raskin at Easter Road in the final match of the season. And a Rangers notice of complaint was raised by the SFA, and Rangers have responded. A spokesperson said, Rangers FC has submitted a full response to this SFA's notice of complaint concerning a remark made during commentary of the Hibernian v Rangers match at the end of last season. The club firmly denies any breach of SFA rules. We are surprised that a complaint has been raised at all, given the context of the comment and the SFA's prior treatment of similar incidents. A response highlights that the SFA's own key match incident panel judged that the referee's decision on the day was incorrect, with 4 out of 5 panel members agreeing that the goal should have been awarded to Rangers. That finding helps explain the nature of a spontaneous emotional comment delivered during a highly charged moment and immediately challenged live on air. A response also sets out serious concerns about the SFA's selective enforcement and inconsistency. We have highlighted multiple examples of similar or stronger remarks made elsewhere in Scottish football that have led to no charges or sanctions. While we remain committed to maintaining high standards, we will continue to challenge any action we consider to be unfair or disproportionate. For many supporters, this charge only adds to the wider frustration surrounding regulatory oversight in recent months, when there are more serious issues in the game to tackle, including improving officiating standards for the benefit of Scottish football. Got to say, Stevie, I like that statement from Rangers. It's straight to the point, no messing about. So good to see they've come out in support of Bulmer here.
Yeah, really like the tone about the selective kind of way they challenge it. I think it's hilarious, to be honest. It's not in any way surprising that the bigwigs should choose to try and punish this, but it's absolutely fine to talk about chopping players up and things that we put up with Morelos. It's absolutely fine to film documentaries in stadiums about how the referees are all against you and everything's terrible. But Rangers get punished for what was a really, as I say, an emotional comment, which Rangers Tom Miller immediately challenged at the time. And I'm sure that Tom, felt the same, but it's proven to be the right thing to do by Tom, because now you have that. Rangers can use that as their defence. But I'm not sure Bulmer, it should have been said because it was an emotional thing. But, I think every Rangers supporter would be disappointed at the lack of consistency. And I think many people would have said, I don't know what Joshua thinks. Joshua's more calm about things. So I look at it from a supporter's point of view. And I think that's a good statement because it's got a wee bit of bite to it. And it's the kind of tone that I like, Derek. So, Joshua might think differently. But for me, I thought it was a really good statement. And I would like to see us more forward footing on statements and things like that in the future.
Joshua?
I think it's fair, but also I think the big story from that game clearly is not a comment that, as you say, was challenged. The big story from the game was that the ball was about 14 yards over the line and wasn't a goal. So it's funny that the soap opera of Scottish football goes on. I will say it is a more popular statement with supporters, I would guess, than some others have been in this calendar year, but. Yeah, I think the big story from that game is not a comment that was challenged pretty. I wasn't listening to it at the time, but it was challenged pretty robustly, wasn't it? That's not as big a story as what was just a terrible decision on the day. It didn't cost anything because there was nothing to play for in that game. But again, had that, like the League Cup final, had that been a game where something was riding on it and you have a decision that is just that bad.
Makes a mockery of the game.
It does, yeah. I thought Raskin spoke about it quite well after the game, didn't he? Where he was measured to a degree, but it's kind of like a shoulder shrug. And I guess if you're a player playing in that game, what else can you do than that?
Yeah, I think what the supporters just want to see is that they want to feel like the club's on their side and understand their point of view. And I think that statement did do that, and I think that's why it was applauded by so many.
Yeah. If anything, the governing body should be hauled up before whatever beaks are above them. I don't think that there's anyone in Scotland, of course, for making a mockery of Scottish football with that nonsensical incident at Easter Road. But there you go. I very much hope we don't see similar instances like that next season, but I worry we will.
Derek, can I just say, just before we go, a lot of people have been talking about VAR and the cameras and everything else. When do we start looking at Nick Walsh and the referee during all that? Because he should be calling that. It's not difficult. He was in a good position. He's completely ignored the fact that the ball entered the goal and rolled up the side. Where was the assistant? All these things have been missed. Rangers are right in pointing out that the refereeing standards in this country need massive improvement. And there's too many faults that conveniently fall on Rangers, which I think the club are right to call out.
Yeah, as I touched on, I hope we see the last of it next season, but I very much doubt that will be the case. But there you go. Right, we'll wrap up there for today. Good show today. Thank you to Stevie and to Joshua as ever, and thank you to you all for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. Those of you that are extra members on the YouTube channel will be back for our usual weekly Q&A show at 2 p.m. usual time. I'll pop the link out on the community page a little bit later on this morning. So get your questions in, folks. And yeah, we'll speak to you again then. If I don't chat to you, enjoy your Monday, whatever you are doing. And yeah, we'll speak again soon. Bye for now.